Yeah, New England sadly has to deal with the sting of losing in the Super Bowl, and that is not something that they will get by very quickly. You just even in the immediate post-game press conference, and then in the end-of-season press conference with a lot of the players, but specifically like Mike Vrabel, you could tell how much the loss is weighing on them. And it sucks to see that because for how good of a season that they had and going 14-3 and undefeated on the road, and Drake May is a vote away from winning the MVP, and they won 3 playoff games, the beatdown that they suffered in the Super Bowl kind of left a sour taste in their mouth, and it's really hard, at least in the current state, the present, to look back on this season and think that it was an overwhelming success because they thought that they could win the championship, and sadly they did not do that. In-house, they feel like they should have won the championship and that they will continue to be a team that is going to do that in the future. And speaking of this past season, I thought for MVP, kind of no debate, it's Drake May.
Gotta be.
He was literally second MVP voting. He led the league in completion percentage at 72%, and then he led the league in passer rating and QBR, both of the quarterback key stats. Of course, he was second in MVP voting by just a vote. He had 4,400 passing yards and 450 rushing yards, 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. What happened?
I was just looking
Jack
back
just
at the
looked at
Justin
the Herbert jersey
like
it
you were
was
like,
yeah.
he
was
missed
one
it by
vote
a
away.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No, that's fine.
distract.
Yeah, that's definitely not
I was
how
making sure
it
it wasn't
happened.
something I said.
No.
So Drake May, for me, it has to be the MVP. I don't think it's kind of really debatable. Some of my friends would jokingly say that the MVP was Ramondre Stevenson. That is only because one of my friends hates Ramondre Stevenson because he had Travion Henderson this year, and he didn't understand why Travion Henderson didn't get more snaps.
Because he just wasn't very good.
Exactly. We agree. My friend does not agree with that, though, as the Henderson owner. Do you guys have someone who was better than Drake May this year?
No,
I do not.
not at all.
I think if there were any guys that deserve a shout, Sanders deserves a shout in terms of Stephon Diggs had a very, very good year. They didn't end up, setting a record, but they were on pace at one point in the season to have the best completion percentage between a wide receiver and quarterback duo in NFL history. That was about 12 weeks into the season. That did not continue. And, of course, with the way the postseason went, that definitely did not continue between the two of them. I thought Chason, the former first-round pick of Jacksonville, was really, really good for them this year. A lot of the additions they added defensively, where they had a ton of cap space, and something that we talked about in the preseason for this team was, did it feel like they were spending money just to spend money? And one of the big conversations we had was, did they just add guys and not splash guys that were going to make an instant impact? We were all wrong there. Guys like Milton Williams had an incredible year. You think of what Robert Spillane was able to do for them as a captain and the middle linebacker he had an excellent year. And there are many other signings. I think Carlton Davis is one of those guys who had a really, really incredible year for them. And that defense really carried them throughout the postseason, and their offense carried them throughout the regular season. So there are some guys that deserve a shout for unsung hero. Do you guys know the name Harold Landry?
Yeah.
Okay.
Defense is edge rusher.
Yes, former Tennessee Titan.
He's definitely he's a guy we talked about.
Flew under the radar. He led the team in sacks. He was another one of their free agent signings this year. But Jalen Hawkins was the actual unsung hero.
Oh, okay, that's
Do you know
good.
what position he plays?
Safety.
He does play safety.
Bang. That was just a shot in the dark because I feel like I know the names of a lot
It's
of
a
their
great
other
safety
positions.
name as well.
Yeah.
If you're
It is
gonna,
a great
play
Hawkins,
by the name game. Exactly.
As a safety, he had led the team with 4 interceptions. He played a key part in that defense throughout the year, a defense that lost key safeties that had been pillars for them in Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar, not just this offseason, but from a couple years ago. He was one of the cornerstones back there for them at safety. And something I do want to mention as kind of an unsung is they had 10, if I'm not mistaken, 10 draft picks in this past draft, all 10 of them started a game for them this year at one point. And that is like, it speaks kind of volumes to this young team was able to start guys that were drafted in the 7th round and 6th round. And then, of course, the key guys like Travion Henderson and Will Campbell, and their offensive guard, their left guard, who was also a rookie, starting multiple key snaps this year. All 10 guys that were drafted started at one point this year. And I think that speaks to the kind of culture that they're building there, and maybe that is something that they can look to continue to be able to do, because that's not something that happens a lot. That's pretty rare for you to start all of your draft picks, especially when you have a lot of late picks. I think they had 4 picks, if I'm not mistaken.
And usually if you do, you don't make the Super Bowl. Like, it's because you were bad.
Agreed. For coaching changes, they promoted Zach Kerr to their permanent defensive coordinator. Their defensive coordinator coming into the season was dealt with a flare-up in prostate cancer and had to leave the team. And so if I'm not mistaken, Zach Kerr was the defensive back coach, ended up calling the plays for much of the year, and that defense was top 3 in the league this year.
Pretty no-brainer to give him the spot.
Absolutely. He was promoted to permanent defensive coordinator. They, of course, kept Josh McDaniels since his head coaching dreams and aspirations are probably out the window. And that was really the big only change in-house from a coaching change perspective. For the NFL draft, the Patriots, because they were the runner-up in the Super Bowl and still have their first-round pick, will pick 31st, and that will be the second-to-last pick of the first round. One of the things I'll talk about with Seattle, and I'll go and again to talk about it with New England here, is that these late first-round picks it's not necessarily about finding. You're not going to find a lot of blue-chip guys, but you're hoping to get lucky and find a guy that's going to be a consistent starter for you for years to come. And I think of guys in the previous 5 years that were drafted, like Greg Rousseau, Buffalo's best edge rusher, was the 30th overall pick for Buffalo. Malachi Starks last year, who had an excellent year this year for the Baltimore Ravens, he fell all the way to 27. George Karlaftis, also another AFC edge rusher, Kansas City's edge rusher. He just got signed to a massive extension, $20 million plus per year. He was a 30th overall pick in his first-round draft. But those picks are, if you do the numbers, just at least on the last 5 years, that's like roughly 1 out of 7 to 1 out of 6, if you're thinking like 27 to 32 of those guys hitting and being consistent starters for you. More often you're going to find draft picks like Peyton Turner, N'Keal Harry, Jeff Gladney. I don't even know that name. That was one of those first-round picks. Joe Tyron Shoyinka, the Buccaneers edge rusher, Lewis Seen, etc. So it can be a guessing game a little bit. And funny enough, you go back into some of these drafts, and the guys who are picked at the top of the second round are like infinitely better than these end of the first round. Like even last year, you think of Carson Schwarzenegger, the first pick of the second round for the Cleveland Browns. Tyler Shuck.
Pick?
Yes, he was. I think he was actually, the 6th pick. Yeah, you're right. I was going to say I thought he was the one higher than 6, but I won't say that. Those kind of, for some reason, it seems like those picks hit more often. And there's a few other ones that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. Will Levis, one of them. Joking, of course. But that is what New England's kind of looking for. And that is something that they would try to prioritize in this draft class. I also think like maybe they're a spot of a team that trades in looking for a 5th-year option. And I'll mention the same thing with Seattle. But it's also a weird year of quarterbacks. Like, Sanders and I think, Sanders for sure, he thinks 3 quarterbacks should go in the first round. Fernando Mendoza, Taylon Green, his guy, and then, of course, Ty Simpson, his other guy.
I don't. Okay.
He's really high on all 3 of those guys.
Nope.
But I don't know, how favorable that is for someone to trade in. One of the teams that did it last year was the New York Giants. They traded in.
Oh, look who just went in the first round of that mock at 29 to the Rams.
That is funny.
That makes a lot more sense than Taylon Green, for example.
Oh, we'll see. But Jackson Dart was a guy the Giants traded in and ended up drafting Jackson Dart. The Falcons, for whatever reason, traded in and drafted a guy with character issues who, shockingly, had character issues this past offseason. it feels like for New England, Seattle, they may be in that kind of spot with their offseason. They both kind of have, shockingly, a lot of cap space, so they're going to have some flexibility in terms of rebuilding these teams that played in the Super Bowl. Do you guys have any spot you would go for the draft? I think one thing that's a conversation is immediately you could see from the Super Bowl, we need to address the offensive line. But I don't know how you do it because their three best offensive linemen, the three guys that weren't rookies, Garrett Bradbury, center, Mike Owenu, I think is how you say his last name, their right guard, and then their right tackle, Morgan Moses, are all under contract next year and all had very excellent years, or at least above average years for an NFL offensive lineman. And then you have the two rookies on the left side. Mike Vrabel's already said Will Campbell is going to start at left tackle next year. Like, he's already came out on the record and said that. So I think, if anything, maybe you address Wilson, the left guard. But I don't know.
If you do, you're trying to do it through free agency, because I don't know why you'd replace a guy who just had a bad rookie year, because rookies often do that offensive line. Like, you're not going to be like, man, we had a guard have a bad rookie year. Let's go spend our 31st pick in the NFL draft and bring in a guy who's going to be like, I mean, he might be the best offensive guard, but it's still just going to. Well, I don't know if I'd rather start a first-year player over a guy who's got a year of experience under his belt. So if you're going to address it, you got to do it in free agency.
I
would
feel
say.
like he was absolutely putrid
No.
either. Like, yeah, he had a very rough into the season, just like, holy crap,
Will Campbell?
Will Campbell.
Yeah, thank you. Will Campbell did. But, like, it wasn't like we were talking all season about, man, this guy reeks. Man, this guy was really bad. So, yeah, there's something to build on.
And it doesn't help that to close the season, you played the Texans defensive line, the Broncos defensive line, and the Seahawks defensive line.
And even the Chargers defensive line.
Yeah.
With Tuli Piloto and Khalil Mack. Jared Wilson is who we're talking about specifically, the left guard for them. So I don't think they'll address in the draft. I do have some potential guys from free agency, but also it could be something if they like a guy a lot.
This is true.
Morgan Moses is only under contract the next 2 years, and that's their starting right tackle, and I think they imagine they're going to start Will Campbell at left tackle. But Will Campbell is also always kind of characterized as a guy who might be able to slide in and play guard. Francis Mauigoa is going to be a similar story this year's draft. If they really like him, like Caden Proctor from Alabama, or Caleb Lomu, the other Utah offensive tackle, and there's even if you wanted to draft a guard, which I think Sanders makes the right take, there's no reason to. Vega, the offensive line for Penn State, if he falls this far, maybe it's a spot where they pull the trigger on that, but I wouldn't go offensive line. I think we're all in agreement there with that first-round pick especially. Where would you guys go? Best available?
So it's likely best available. I wouldn't hate a wide receiver here, depending on who's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Stephon Diggs had a good season.
Denzel
He's
Boston.
getting older. If Denzel Boston's there, somebody like that. And then talking about best available, there's always one guy that falls to like one of the last, 3-ish picks, and everyone, makes the, oh my gosh, how do we let this guy fall that far? So like maybe they get that guy. No way of knowing who it is. I'll just say Jamrod McCoy, the Tennessee cornerback.
Okay.
Torn ACL. His medicals are hazy. People are scared off because of that. He falls. He gets drafted at 31st, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, we just let the Patriots get this guy. And then half the time it's like, okay, well, there's a reason he fell to 31. It doesn't work out.
Well,
but
there's two of those that I come to mind from this past year's draft: Mike Green and Donovan Ezeraku.
Yeah.
Cowboys and Ravens edge rushers who didn't have great years.
Yeah. The one that comes to my mind though was CeeDee Lamb in that 2020 draft, I believe. But the only reason he went that far is because the Raiders drafted Henry Ruggs, and the Raiders are dysfunctional at drafting. So, or at least they were for that period under Gruden, I guess. He was in charge of I think that was a Gruden draft, or maybe it was a McDaniel draft, but he's the one that comes to mind. So like there are guys that will slide that it doesn't make sense, but sometimes it's just you just get lucky and the teams in front of you really don't need that position, right? So they pass up or are dysfunctional.
Yeah, like I said, rough estimate, looking at just the last 5 years, to my opinion, it's like a 1 out of 6 chance that one of these guys is like a starter, a consistent starter for over the course of 4 years. And some of the jury's still out on last year's draft class, but a guy like Greg Rousseau, George Karlaftis, who I mentioned earlier, or even Malachi Starks with the way he played last year, it feels like he's going to be that. Nate Wiggins is a guy who was drafted late in the first round, also another Ravens defensive back.
What if I have my draft? What if I could guarantee that you get a good player with that 31st overall pick? And he fills a position in need.
Okay.
A.J. Brown. All right, he's under contract, I believe, through 2029.
He's not worth a first-round pick, though.
I agree.
That's not his trade value.
I just think he needs a change of scenery.
But see,
Agreed.
Because everyone knows he needs a change of scenery, the Eagles don't really have any leverage there. Like, how are you giving up a first-round pick for him?
Because I think that he would. I also throw that out because I think it's really funny that Vrabel is the one who drafted him and traded him from the Titans.
Sure.
So I don't think that it's gonna. I don't think that if they went and got a wide receiver, it would be A.J. Brown.
Yeah.
Just because clearly Vrabel has already moved on from him once. I don't know why he would choose to bring him in after some of the drama in Philly.
Maybe he just saw really far ahead into the future. He was
Yeah,
like, in 5 years I'll be the Patriots head coach. If I trade him now, I can get him in 5 years.
That's funny. While that would be cool, I do think wide receiver is going to be a need. I think that Stephon Diggs is probably not going to be there next year. That's kind of what the people I listen to podcasts and on Twitter are saying, is that he's kind of in that stage where he's going to spend like 1 year at everywhere he lands for the last couple of years of his career.
And then the next year we'll just go to whoever gives him the most money.
Yeah. So wide receiver is going to be a need because you don't want to trot out Keyshawn Butte and Matt Collins and Demario Douglas.
Even if he doesn't leave, it's still a need regardless.
Yes.
It was something that was like a glaring hole this year. I think it was something we talked about. I know we talked about it with Sam Darnold, the Seahawks, jokingly so apparently. Did they have enough weapons? They clearly answered that with the way the year JSN had and even Cooper Kupp. But
A.J. Barner.
A.J. Barner. And Torrey Horton was excellent until he got hurt, and then Rashid Shaheed replaced it. But back on New England, it was always going to be some kind of weakness with the youth that they had outside of Stephon Diggs. Matt Collins was, is this guy going to be something for them? Keyshawn Boutte is a guy who comes to mind. Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, who was one of their picks in last year's draft. It still, I think, has to be addressed. I think if just to move on into free agency, like cap space, those kinds of decisions, they went heavy after the defense last year. Guys like Harold Landry and Milton Williams and Robert Spillane and Carlton Davis. This year, I think, in free agency and in the draft, I think they need to approach offense. They have $40 million in cap space next year. They only have two really notable free agents, and that is Chason, who had 7.5 sacks this year, and then Jalen Hawkins, who was my unsung hero for this team this year. That's really the only two key free agents. The only other one that comes to mind is they're losing their other two tight ends outside of Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, and Jack Westover. And so maybe tight end depth is going to be some kind of a problem. But I do think that they need to approach offense and playmakers, especially at receiver, tight end, maybe another guy who can roll in and play offensive line for them. And I think that's how they should approach the draft and free agency. I already have some guys that have come to mind of like Mike Evans, Rashid Shaheed. In a world where George Pickens is not franchise tagged or signed by Dallas, send a bag for George Pickens. I do think if you're looking at offensive linemen, it would be someone to start at left guard or who could roll to left tackle. And I think of the two former Browns offensive guards, Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio, who will both be free agents this year. And those are the kind of guys you'd love to sign because they're veteran guys. They've played a ton of snaps. They've played a ton of offensive line snaps. They got the experience
because they haven't won ever.
Yeah, they were Cleveland Browns. They were both on the playoff team.
Yeah,
they were both on the team that won a playoff game, but they want
I believe they are both career Browns.
Yes.
So they want to win more than a playoff
they
game.
want to taste the greatness. They want to taste, Ann Michael May's baked treats.
I mean, I would too, so I
Facts,
can't
yeah.
hate that.
So I do think maybe one of those guys would be a really, really nice signing for them. Also because of their age, they're both in their 30s. You only have to sign them to 1 or 2 year deals. And I do think that is, at least in my Madden team building experience, the best way to do it is not sign the long 4 or 5 year deals and be locked into guys, and prioritize signing guys to 2 or 1 year deals to keep your flexibility open.
Sure.
Because things are going to change. Drake May is going to end up getting paid a boatload of money in, I guess it'd be 2 years from now, in that coming off season. Those are the kind of guys I would approach. Are there any names that kind of pop off for you guys? Other receivers that are available? There's guys like Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, there's not a lot of options is the reality.
Yeah.
Free agency is kind of getting barer and barer. I feel like it's in part, the salary cap is expanding and teams are realizing how important it is to keep the guys in-house and to prioritize that. Because, you go back a couple of years and it just feels like it was a lot easier to find guys on the market in free agency. So I do think the times have changed a little bit as far as that goes. But yeah, they're just set up in such a great situation, and you already touched on it about how they have so few starters that are, their contracts are up. They're returning almost everybody. And so if they can just either bring back those pieces like you might want to do with Chase on, or find suitable replacements, you have a team that just went to the Super Bowl. And then you can have the discussion about, it was all because of your schedule. If it was, get better this offseason, right? You now have a team that 20 of the 22 guys will have played a full season together. Not a lot of other NFL teams can say that. And I don't know the last time you had a team that went to the Super Bowl and then returned 20 out of 22 guys. Or is it 20? Or is it 20? Is it 19? It's 20 because the tight ends are both backups. So you're returning 20 out of 22 guys from that starting lineup. I don't know I would love to. I may have to look into that, like how the most returning players from a Super Bowl team. But this is a great situation. And so this offseason is, I would say, primarily about development, right? I would say don't address that offensive line. Develop the guys you already have there. Develop Will Campbell and Jared Wilson because they're both drafted in the first 3 rounds. Continue to develop Drake May. Try and work through some of the mistakes he made this offseason, right? Or this postseason, the collapse he had down the stretch. Work through that, improve on that, get to the point where that doesn't happen because you want to be in that situation again next year and you want to play better than that. Get him a big weapon. A name that comes to mind for me would be like a Jalen Waddle because I think the Dolphins are going to be in rebuild mode. I think the Dolphins are going to be bad for several years. The only issue is he's in the AFC East, and I know that teams in division don't like moving big pieces around like that. But Jalen Waddle has had really good games and really good half seasons when Tyreek Hill misses time here and there. So is he the kind of guy that, given a good quarterback and a good offense and not Tua turn the ball over, throwing him the ball, could he really ascend into that elite number 1 weapon or really good number 1? What does he look like there? Could they go get a Romeo Doubs? Do they try and follow the Green Bay Packers and just have a bunch of 2As at wide receiver? Or does Romeo Doubs...
Don't do that.
Don't follow the Packers? That's what we don't have to get into that. That's one of my best takes. That might be one of my best takes. We'll get into that later.
I more say don't do that. I need Romeo Doubs in a Commander's jersey. So.
Okay. But yeah, I think it's just get him a weapon. Let the offensive line develop because I think you've got the pieces there. Just let them figure it out, and then on defense, go get the guy or two you need.
I feel like it's kind of an incomplete offensive line. I feel like you're missing about 3-4 inches of Will Campbell's arms.
Sure.
I was really confused you were going with that. I disagree.
Okay.
But given this offseason, those baked goods, they do wonders. Put hair in
you
your
can
chest.
do a lot of just hanging from the pull-up bar.
Yeah, exactly. And put hair in your chest, grow a few inches out of the fingertips. No, I think this offseason is going to be really fun for the Patriots because there's so little to be done, and it's just going to be so much excitement.
Sure.
Yeah, speaking of Romeo Doubs, I don't want him in a Saints uniform because can you imagine a Guardian cap?
That's pretty bad.
Saints.
See,
look at that. You can't take
Commanders-
that gold to make it a Guardian cap.
The Commanders' jerseys already have no aura.
Yeah.
So it don't matter if it's a Guardian cap or not. We'll gladly welcome him.
Well, looking forward to next season, I do think the early realistic goal for the New England Patriots is to make the playoffs.
Sure.
And I said a very similar thing for the Chicago Bears on Tuesday's show, speaking of Caleb Williams. When you have a guy who, for Drake May, it was actually the opposite. Caleb had the electric postseason, although it wasn't good statistically. Drake May had the electric regular season and a bad postseason. I do think you need to make sure you give him another chance. See if he can, is he Justin Herbert, or is he, going to be one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, like a lot of Patriots fans think he's going to be in Drake May, the heir to Tom Brady. So I think making the playoffs is the goal. Speaking of the schedule, you brought it up earlier. Schedule will not be a question next year, at least at this point.
Sure.
When you look at the teams, they play the NFC North, which was the only division where all 4 teams had a winning record. That includes the Minnesota Vikings with 9 and Max Brosmer,
9.
and Carson Wentz.
Shout out 9.
They also play the AFC West, which is, of course, the division with the Broncos and Chargers, who made the postseason last year. Kansas City, you kind of expect to respond. And then Fernando Mendoza and Clint Kubiak, that's an interesting pairing there in Las Vegas because they finished.
Will you have them making the playoffs again next season?
I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see. I do want to see how they approach the rest of the draft.
Lots
If
of
you
moves
did,
to
we
be
might
made.
need to have an intervention.
No, I'm here for it.
I would.
Honestly.
I don't think it's.
I feel way
that
better
bad
about
of-
that take than last season.
don't-
Looking ahead, if the offseason pans out how I expect it to.
Yeah, okay. You now have a division that has the Broncos, who just won the AFC Championship.
Regression hitting hard.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Okay. Continue.
They also, of course, will play the Buffalo Bills twice in their own division once again, and they escaped with the win in Buffalo the first time, and then choked a 21-point lead to them the second time. They do you would think at least 4 wins in division with the Dolphins and Jets, but because they finished first in the AFC East, they have to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. There will be a Super Bowl rematch against the Seahawks in Seattle, and then they'll play the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they lost to earlier, this year at home. They'll play them at home again and try to get redemption in a game where they had 5 fumbles and ended up losing by 3 points.
Tough.
So the schedule will not be a question next year, outside of the Dolphins and Jets games, and maybe the J.J. McCarthy 9 game. So making the postseason, I think, is the goal for next year.
Sure.
Try to go 10-7, 9-8, prove that last season wasn't necessarily a fluke, and give Drake May and especially this team another chance in the postseason because, as we mentioned, so many guys are returning. It will be a very, very similar team next year for New England.
I wonder what Patriots fans' expectations are. And if you're a Patriots fan and you've made it this far in the video, I'm curious what the expectations are because I feel like they're going to have higher... Like, making the playoffs, I feel like is going to be a little low for them. Especially because, you said 10 games or 9 games. Like, that's a wild card you're talking about. You're talking about being a wild card at that point. In all likelihood, because I don't think
Sure.
the Bills are going to win 8 games. And so you're talking about, like, the expectation is finish second in your division after you just won it and you were the 2 seed in the AFC. I don't know if that's going to be good enough for Patriots fans, but I guess we'll see.
I do want to say that they were the ones that I know, and then the ones that are public Patriots fans, they all thought they were going to win the Super Bowl and that they were the best team in the NFL. Bill Simmons had a mockery TikTok. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
It's such a good video.
He thought certain things were going to happen in the Super Bowl, and then it's video footage of plays in the Super Bowl of the exact opposite happening. Kevin Wildes of First Things First had his whole bit, and he got clowned the morning after. My brother thought he bought a jacket, a Patriots jacket that had all of the Super Bowl logos on them on the sleeves, which is really cool because there's 6 of them. And he said might have to take it to the tailor on Monday prior to the Super Bowl. Sadly, that did not pan out.
You save some money,
Yeah, it saved some capital there. So I do want to say that they have very high expectations, and so that is an interesting question of will they be disappointed if next year it is
Sure.
missing the postseason, which is I think it's certainly on the board, or finishing as a wild card team.